And right now, we're going to get to those catchers in the free agent market because the White Sox currently only Corey Lee and a couple young players that you saw last year, Carlos Perez, et cetera, are available on the White Sox 40-man right now. So there was a point of emphasis in Vinnie's article from ALLCITY.com, the 10 things he learned from the winter meetings. This is an emphasis for the White Sox. They will be getting a veteran catcher, right, Vinnie?
Yeah, it certainly seems that they will. They like Corey Lee, and I don't think that this should be seen as Corey Lee can't catch in the big leagues next year. He's going to catch plenty in the big leagues next year. We'll see whether he demands the most of that playing time or if whoever they end up getting will. But they really like the way Corey Lee showed defensively. They like the way he showed in handling a pitching staff, but he's a young guy with very little major league experience. And I think that is a position, because of the impact that it has on the pitching staff, where you need some certainty, and you need some certainty in knowing that if the White Sox throw out a young pitcher who doesn't have much experience, that he's going to be working with somebody who knows the ropes. If you throw out somebody who's maybe an experienced pitcher but is trying to work his way back, right? Maybe it is a Michael Soroka type that we're talking about. Throw into a guy that he can have confidence working with, that knows the opposing roster and how to go through it. Corey Lee will probably be that guy one day, but he's not that guy right now. There's more development to occur at the major league level. So they're going to go out and they want somebody who's a veteran. They want somebody who can play defense. We've seen from the White Sox catchers the last couple of years, defense has been something that has been, left to be desired. And so certainly all across the diamond, they're looking to improve defenses. We're going to talk about throughout the course of the show. It's why they went and signed Paul DeJong to play shortstop. It's why they're very happy that they got Nicky Lopez in that trade with the Braves. It's why they're very happy that they have Luis Robert Jr. playing center field. But catcher is a position where they think they can upgrade defensively. They have a quote-unquote open spot with the person who's going to be with Corey Lee on that roster. And then remember, too, there's a guy coming in Edgar Caro. So if you get a veteran, you're not necessarily locking in your catching plans for the foreseeable future, because Edgar Caro is only 20 years old, even though he's already at AA. He's got some time still in the minor leagues to develop. So they are going to be going after a veteran, defensive-minded catcher. There are a few of those out there on the free agent market. Who knows if that's where they'll find him? They might end up getting him via a trade, but there are some of those guys on the free agent market who do fit that description.
And I see people talking about they're good with Corey Lee, but obviously the White Sox aren't good with Corey Lee being the primary catcher of the White Sox.
They might be. We'll see how it plays out. Remember, when you're the number one catcher, it's a far smaller, or because the workload is what it is, your game total is going to be lower than when you're the number one first baseman, when you're the number one shortstop, when you're the number one center fielder. Those guys, given health, should all be expected to play 150-plus games. That's not going to be the case with the guy who's at the top of the depth chart at the catching position. And so even if Corey Lee is the guy at catcher, there has to be another guy. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's the kind of guy they go out and get, or maybe they go out and get a guy who is so well thought of and so well able to do the things that they're looking for, that Corey Lee becomes the quote-unquote backup, even though it's more of a number one, number two type situation.
And you could see in the free agent catchers that we have on this list, they're up there in age, and so it's no real, long multi-year deal, as they do have Edgar Caro, Corey Lee, Carlos Perez already in the minor leagues or in the system currently. So these guys would be stopgaps for the most part, and veterans who are going to be teaching these young kids how to receive these pitchers and do a game plan. So you have Yasmani Grandal, who is 35 years old. For the most part, he was been here for the last 4 years. He won't be back here. Austin Hedges just won a World Series championship with the Texas Rangers. He's 31 years old. Martin Maldonado, this is the catcher that most people think that the White Sox are looking at because of his work with the Astros. He also worked with Corey Lee when he was down there. He's 37 years old. Former Royal also. Mitch Garver, who's more of an offensive catcher, 32 years old. Jacob Stallings, 33 years old. Austin Nola, a very veteran, great catcher. For defensive side, he's 33 years old. Brother, of course, is Aaron Nola. Kirk Casale is 35 years old. Former Cub Tucker Barnhart, 32 years old. used to be a good bat, mostly now just a defensive catcher exclusively. Roberto Perez, former Pirate, 34 years old. Gary Sanchez is not the defensive guy, but I put him in there because he is a free agent. He would be more of the offensive guy. He's a 31-year-old catcher. We know this guy, Eric Haas, as my guy Chris Tannehill used to call him, Honus Haas, because every time he played with the White Sox, he used to crush. He's only 30 years old. That's a big-time surprise. He's only 30. Tom Murphy, average name, average game, 32 years old. And then, of course, former Royal, Cam Gallagher, 31 years old. So out of that list, what do you think a couple of those catchers would be perfect for the White Sox to bring in and mentor the young people while also running that pitching staff?
Well, listen, we've brought up his name a few times, and I think Martin Maldonado jumps out of that group just because of the success that he's had in Houston, the great ability that he has to handle a pitching staff. Not to mention the fact that he's already mentored Corey Lee and helped in his development, and he's got some experience playing with Pedro Grifol during a brief time in Kansas City. But there are other guys on that list. I think that you brought up Austin Hedges. That's a guy who's got a sterling defensive reputation. A guy like Tucker Barnhart, I believe, has won a couple of Gold Gloves as a catcher. Talking to some of the folks who cover the Cubs, maybe not quite Gold Glove caliber anymore during his short time in Chicago, but he's a guy maybe who could give you the defensive upgrade you're looking for. And then Eric Haas jumps out because not only were his defensive numbers all right last year, but we know he can hit. Yes. Now, last season, he hit far less than he has in years past. The numbers, to be quite honest, fell off a cliff. But this is a guy who spent his entire career in the American League Central playing for either the Tigers or the Cleveland team under a couple of names during his time. But this is a guy who, knows the division, has all right defensive numbers, at least from last season, and has some history of doing some offensive damage as well. So if there is that kind of hope that maybe we could squeeze a little bit out of that catcher position in terms of offense, maybe that would be a guy that you would see. But from everything Chris Getz has said, the defense is really the priority. And when you're talking about a guy like Maldonado or Hedges, you're talking about a guy who doesn't really even hit 200.
No.
So, I mean, you can tell that if the focus is on guys like that, then really it is strictly on what they can do behind the plate and working with the pitchers. So I would tend to lean more likely it would be somebody like that. But you saw that list. It's exhaustive. There's a lot of names on it, even if none of them are, all-star types. It's a list of guys that certainly presents options, we'll put it that way.
Yeah, and for catcher, I would want more of a defensive guy than a person that can hit. Gary Sanchez pops out because he can hit home runs, and what he did last year in San Diego was good. But for the most part, he is an offensive catcher. He's a guy that you probably wouldn't want to be as the stopgap for your team. And Mazman brings up Mitch Garver. Yes, good hitter. I don't know how well he's a catcher, but yes, I want a catcher who is defense first. That is his way that he got in the major leagues. That's the reason why he's staying in the major leagues. That's why Martin Maldonado just sounds so good for the White Sox. And a guy who's played for Pedro Grifol before down there with the Royals, a brief stint down there with the Royals, understands what Pedro wants, understands what the White Sox are trying to do with this young staff that they're going to be more than likely going to be bringing in for their starting staff. And so teaching people like Edgar Caro, the Carlos Perez, the Corey Lees of the world, how to be a major league catcher. He's done it for so long that he can have just his presence just have effect on these guys. But I'm sure his everyday preparation that would filter down to the players who are below him. I don't necessarily know how Yasmani Grandal got down with the younger catchers, but for me, from the outside, it seemed like he was, hey, I'm trying to get myself ready, and that's no fault of his own. He's not, you don't necessarily need to be a mentor to younger catchers. I need this catcher that the White Sox are going to bring in to be a mentor to the younger catchers, because this person, as you saw the ages, are not going to be here for the long haul. So this is that person where they're defense first, but also they have a role on the team of being a leader / mentor.
Well, and I'll say this too, we show that list. Probably not a lot of names, if there are any names on there, that will excite White Sox fans in any way, right? I think even if they do get a guy who might fit what they're trying to do, like Maldonado or Hedges, people are going to rush to Baseball Reference and say, I'm sorry, his batting average was what last year? And if that's something you're worried about, well then, hey, there's an opportunity for Corey Lee. Like, these guys are being brought in to do specific things. Corey Lee can hit his way into more playing time. Corey Lee could show up and do such a good job that he could be the guy at the top of that depth chart, and it's no big deal, right? It's not like you're going out and you're signing what he was when they signed him, Yasmani Grandal, and it's like, well, that's it. Nobody behind him can compete with this guy because just got a huge contract for being an all-star level player. Corey Lee is going to have an opportunity here. It's not going to be taken away from him, the opportunity that he would have to be at the top of that depth chart. All he's got to do is play well enough and show the coaching staff that he deserves it, and then I'm sure they would be perfectly happy saying, well, our number 2 guy, He's our number 2 guy. He doesn't have the most playing time, but boy, can he play great defense back there, and boy, can he work with a pitching staff. So I think you're seeing this list of guys for reasons, for specific reasons, and it seems like that's what the White Sox are circling, is one of these types of players.
We all silly like the mayor.